Okay, now that April's here, we can finally start. Hi, everyone. Wow, 103 people. Isn't that amazing to have this powerful community space with you all? I'm Shayne Lovera, they, them pronouns. Vadik Kumba, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Vadik, and I'm here with Shay, and we're going to work with a team of facilitators to have this conversation. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say before we want to open up the space for people to say hello.
Hey, thank you. Before I pass it off to Nirva, just like if you feel inclined to show your video, wave around, say a hi, make sure that you write your name in the chat, just like we won't get to introductions for 104 people, but if we can all unmute and just quickly say hi, hey y'all, that would be great.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, buddy. Hi. Good.
Hello.
Nice smiles.
Great, Providence. Awesome. Thank you.
Now, was this supposed to be with the representatives? I thought they were doing this, or no?
Yeah, so we'll get to that. Yes, we'll get to that.
Okay. And can you explain who you two are besides your names? Because I don't know who you are.
We're human. Sorry. We're human beings. We're human beings,
obviously.
And we're doing the work of like convening these different conversations that we're going to dive into deeper. But we did want to just like allow people in the community to say hi before we pass it off to the representatives. And that's symbolic of like people power, and you all having the power in the space. And so we are going to dive into that and give you credentials and explain who we are a little bit more. But we do want to pass it to Nirva now to introduce the context of the meeting.
Thank you, Vadik, and thank you, Shay, for opening it up. And great question, Cheryl. So yes, so it's a meeting of city council members and community organizers. And I think one of the things that we wanted to do a bit different is generally when we have meetings, it's always the city council person or elected official who opens up the meeting. But this is an opportunity, not only an opportunity, but during this time, we wanted this to be about the community, which is why it was important for the community organizers like Shay and Vadik to open up, because at the end of the day, we are elected by the community. We represent all of you, but the people who have the most power are the community members. And so this is going to be a bit different. So thank you all for being here. Welcome. It's a warm evening. I hope people have AC in their homes. I don't, so I'll probably start sweating at some point. But I'm very happy to see many of your faces or see your names. Thank you, Vadik, Shay, all the other facilitators, which I'll give a few minutes for them to quickly introduce themselves. But the reason that we're having this meeting is because these past few months we've seen our state has experienced many challenges. Many of us have been home or trying to figure out how to balance work, life. There's been a lot of changes in our lives. And also there are some real social issues that have been impacting our local community as well as globally. But many of these issues are not new, particularly when it relates to race, when it relates to inequity, when it relates to access. These are issues that have plagued our nation for centuries. And so we wanted to have a community conversation because one of the things that have come up lately is how do we support social service resources to create a stronger social service network? How do we reallocate funds to ensure that the most vulnerable folks within our community are getting the resources that they need? And our community members have also been looking at how the city is spending their money. What are we prioritizing? And what we've seen is that a lot of the priority is going into public safety, the police department, but we're also seeing some of the conflict that is happening between the police department as well as the community. And so as a community, we thought, how do we bring everyone together? Because Helen, myself, John, other city council members, we're all getting emails from everyone asking us, like, what are we going to do? Should we reallocate funds? Should we completely stop funding the police department? So we wanted to take this moment to go over, to have a brief overview of the city's budget, as well as hear some of your concerns and input around what we should be investing in. What are the things as a community we should prioritize? So I'm going to let Helen as well as John say a few words before we continue. Helen?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. I'm just overwhelmed by how many people registered, and I'm very grateful. When Nirva asked if I would join her in doing this forum this evening, I would have jumped at the chance, because she is exactly right. As a city council woman, we have been listening to hours and hours and hours of testimony from the people who have been impacted the most by some of our policing policies. And there's been some really robust substantive conversations, but I think it's time that we hear from our constituents in our wards. We are lucky to have Vadik and his team facilitating this discussion, but we really, really do want to come out of this meeting with an idea of what you're thinking, because we have tasked our police force with things that they shouldn't be doing. Tending to the homeless, some of the things that they respond to are just not things that the police need to respond to. So we're just interested in seeing what everyone else thinks, and it will help us form our arguments, our thoughts. We do definitely need this input, so I'm very grateful everyone is here.
John?
Thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you all for being here. We truly can't thank you enough, and thank you to our wonderful facilitators tonight. I'm proud to serve the people of Ward 1, and I'm grateful to also work with my wonderful colleagues, Councilwoman Anthony of Ward 2 and Councilwoman LaFortune of Ward 3. I'm John Goncalves, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the City Councilman for Ward 1, which represents Fox Point, Wayland Square, College Hill, the Jewelry District, and downtown. And I'm just so thrilled to see so many of our dear neighbors and friends on this call. So just thank you for being here. And these are precarious times, but if we can each just give each other another quick collective wave and send positive energy to each other, that would be great. As your local representative on the city level, we, in addition to other council members, as Councilwoman LaFortune and Councilwoman Anthony have suggested, are tasked every year with adopting a city budget, one that's reflective of the interests and needs of you all as hardworking taxpayers, constituents, and residents who care about the city. And as you know, a budget is a moral document. It's important for us to collectively as a community examine and think about how we allocate or reallocate resources to meet the needs of our communities, as well as invest more in underlying challenges such as housing and homelessness and social services and jobs. And tonight I'm here to listen, to be a fly on the wall, and I'm eager to engage in dialogue with you and ultimately lean into a robust discussion about policing in our budget. With that being said, thank you so much for being here again, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
Thank you so much. So I just want to give a quick overview of how tonight's going to, the layout of this evening. So first, we're starting off with introductions, and then we're going to go over into the history and context of policing. Then we're going to do a budget analysis, or Helen and I will go over the budget. And since Helen is on the finance committee, she's been sitting on many of these conversations. Both Councilman Goncalves and I have also been joining on those meetings, but since she's a committee member, she has some insider information that sometimes we don't always get right away. So she'll be able to provide a more thorough presentation. After that, we're going to break out into rooms where we'll have a discussion. Many of you received a link to fill out a form, and if you didn't have a chance to fill the form, that's okay. The facilitators will go over it with you, and we'll give you a few minutes to do so, and then we'll talk about the form a bit and answer any questions, and also hear your input in how we can invest or divest, or just your thoughts in general about the budget, and also how can we better support our most marginalized communities. So now I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce our facilitator. I actually will be one of the facilitators in the rooms, the closeout sessions. But our facilitators include Vadik, Shay, Kate, Nick, Cassie, and Darcy. And I hope I didn't miss anyone. So we'll start off with Vadik, and he could give a brief introduction and tell you a bit about himself. And I just want to say, I've known Vadik for quite some time, because Vadik is, everyone's a true community member, but Vadik has been on the ground for many years, and many of you have seen him at the YMCA. He used to run the summer camp and some of the after-school programs. My daughter still remembers a story about how she lost a teddy bear, and Vadik, I don't know, went on a hunt and found it for her, and she will never forget that. But he's a wonderful person. I also I went through an Undoing Racism workshop, in which Vadik came on the last day to debrief, and it was just a powerful conversation that we had with him at Brown. So this is someone who really understands the work. He's been active in the community for quite some time, and it's truly an honor and privilege for him to be a part of this conversation and to lead and to help lead this discussion. So thank you, Vadik.
Thanks, Nirva. I was not expecting that, but I'm deeply blushing right now. I think that for time's sake, would it be okay if I just go into the history, and then we allow folks in the facilitators to really introduce themselves and things like that? Yeah? Okay, I'm seeing head nods. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna just dive into this history, and then after we do the history, we're gonna go into the budget stuff, but I am gonna take space for us to have a breath, because it's gonna be a lot that we're gonna go through in a second. So, before we talk about the future, we have to examine our past. And I want to share this quote from sci-fi genius Octavia Butler.
I know. What was that?
I'll ground this.
I don't know. Please keep your microphones muted, so we can not lose any of the info that we're sharing. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Shay. So this is a quote from Octavia Butler. It reads, "Of course, writing novels about the future doesn't give me any special ability to foretell the future, but it does encourage me to use our past and present behaviors as guides to keep our world we seem to be creating. The past, for example, is filled with repeating cycles of strength and weakness and stupidity, empire and ashes. To study history is to study humanity, and to try to foretell the future without studying history is like trying to learn to read without bothering to learn the alphabet." And that's Octavia Butler. So we need to have this conversation using the same alphabet. So as we build on these concepts, we can understand the trajectory of justice and our roles in shaping it. Before what we know is the transatlantic slave trade got a firm hold on labor, landowners used indentured servants that worked the land in exchange for a promise of their own land. But as you can imagine, conditions weren't safe, and most people died before they hit the 7th and final year of servitude. That's why people decided to break their contracts and run away. People made this calculation regularly, and when they ran away together in groups. In 1640, John Punch, an African, ran away with a Scotsman, a Dutchman, and when they were captured, the Scotsman and the Dutchman got 4 more years of servitude. John Punch, the African, is sentenced to perpetual servitude. This is a message to those people that would go to be considered white, that they had a stake in maintaining this order, the order that became known as chattel slavery. As the institution of slavery became established, so was a force to control the order. It was well documented that slave patrols served as a foundation for modern police forces. And we know that Providence and other northern states incrementally phased out slavery and didn't have the same need for slave patrols in the 1800s. But they had a system with like night watchmen or day watchmen. Their duties, as the Providence Journal puts it, was to quell rowdies and to catch thieves and control riots. But when you read about the accounts of riots of Hardscramble in 1826 and Snowtown in 1831 that led to the incorporation of Providence as a city, it gives you an understanding of how the law and citizens of Providence felt about free Black population. So this is from the Free Negro in Providence, and it's an account of what happened after the incidents, the massacres, and the loss of property and wealth in Hardscramble. So I'm going to read it here. It says, after this example of mob violence, 4 white men were apprehended and brought to trial in the Providence courts. The account of the trial is revealing. According to the testimony, 40 or 50 white men took part in the destruction of Negroes' houses before an estimated crowd of 1,000 interested spectators. Apparently, there was no attempt made to stop the destruction. The testimony of the town watchman was reported as follows. He went there with Mr. Mann, his file leader, and they did not think it prudent or proper to interfere, considered he was doing his duty by going there and keeping as still as possible. 6 years after the destruction of Hardscramble, Snowtown suffers a similar outcome in 1831. As a result of the violence against Black people and their homes in the city of Providence is incorporated. They don't immediately form a force that will prevent such violence against Black people. The city waits 3 decades. It's when the Civil War is winding down and the future of enslaved Africans in the country is unsure, that the mayor, Thomas Doyle, pushes for the creation of a police department in Providence. They fill the ranks with white Civil War veterans. There won't be any non-white officers until after the Second World War. It is in this time of legal white supremacy, legal discrimination, when people that are most vulnerable to the cruelty of society are legally shut out from developing those systems. It's at this time when the police force and the large criminal justice system are utilized as a mechanism to extract labor from formerly enslaved people, as well as cracking down on unionized and organized labor. And so there's like a whole lot more, and I suggest that folks like do reading, and we'll give you some tools for like digging into it deeper. But I do want to hop in here and like share a little bit about the war on drugs, which I think is like a modern engine of a lot of the things that we're seeing around policing. And this comes from John Ehrlichman, and he was the domestic affairs aide to Nixon. And he says this: the Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had 2 enemies, the anti-war left and Black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or Black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and Blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Shay, do you have a breathing, something we could do?
Yes, thank you, Vadik. So at that point, digging into history can be a really intense act. So I just want us to take a moment to give space to what Vadik just shared with us. So I'm just gonna count to 3, and we'll take a 1 breath and release, and I'll count to 3 and we'll take a second breath. So we'll do 2 breaths. So 1, 2, 3. We breathe in, and we let go. 1, 2, and 3. We breathe in. And we let go. Thank you. That's super important. I wanted to quickly share a few kind of rules of engagement or ways of being before we move on to the budget. So this is a space where we're inviting everyone to respect each other's voice, respect time, respect space. And it is not a debate space, it's a generative idea space, because what we're gonna do is share a lot of information with all of you. It can be a lot, but also the space after sharing that information will be so folks can share their ideas, post their questions. So it'll be this generative collaborative space. But I just wanted to highlight that. And I encourage us, if we have any burning questions, to just write them down, because at the end you can bring them up in the break room, or also you can feel free to like connect with your council person and bring those questions up. So thank you. And then I'll pass it off to
someone else, sort of being the administrator.
Hello? We have some loose microphones. So I'll pass it off to Nirva.
All right, so we're now going to go to the section where we're going over the budget. So we have a presentation prepared, and Helen, Councilwoman Anthony, will be leading this.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We're just going to give you a brief overview of where we are with regard to our budget. As many of you know, we recently just passed the levy. Usually what we do is pass a total budget, a complete budget with the levy and the budget together. Unfortunately, with the COVID crisis, as you all know, we have no idea as a state or as a city how much we're going to be receiving in federal aid. And so it's basically shut down our ability from the state and at a local level to really figure out what our budget is, because we don't know how much money we're going to be getting, and we're hoping we're going to be getting money. So anyway, what we did is pass the levy recently, so the tax bills, as you know, have gone out, and that gives us the ability to collect the taxes. The taxes have not increased from last year. They're exactly as they were last year, but it was really important during this time for us to get our bills out so we can start collecting the revenue. So anyway, where we are right now is we're waiting. We're kind of in a waiting period, but we are continuing our discussions about the budget. So this will continue. I think we're waiting for the state. And that probably they won't be able to pass a budget till maybe August, September. And so we're really kind of in a holding pattern here. So it gives us a wonderful opportunity to have these conversations so that we know what we should be doing with our budget. So anyway, let's go take a closer look now at the police budget. So if you could go to the next slide. So the total municipal budget for 2021 is $512,613,361. And so what we did today is we have broken this down so that you can see that the budget for the police is $88,007,689. But you also can see what that is in comparison to the fire department, the planning department, the economic opportunity department, the public works, recreation, parks, inspections and standards, and human services. So, and then you have school appropriation all the way down at the bottom, which of course is the largest part of our budget. So I think it's important just to know from this slide how much we spend of our budget on the police budget. Next slide. Billy? Hello? Can we go to the next slide? I'm so sorry. I'm not exactly sure what's happening with our slide advancement.
Are you ready for the next slide? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I am, but it's given everyone a wonderful opportunity to absorb these figures. Yes, please.
Sorry.
Oh, that's
I just got a phone call from someone who couldn't log in.
Okay, thank you, Billy. Okay, and so now you can see that we have, oh, I'm so sorry, we are showing you what the percentage change is from fiscal year 2020. So as you can see is, school appropriation is increased by 4%, police 3%, fire 5%. Then you look at our planning department, which is has a decrease, as does economic opportunity, recreation increase of 30%. So this is just giving you a snapshot of basically what is being proposed. This is from the mayor's proposed budget, and this is what we are deliberating within the city council, within the finance committee specifically right now. And so it's our opportunity as a city council to weigh in and see if these priorities and these increases and decreases are, what we would like to see for the city. Next slide. Okay, and then this is another look at the whole pie. You can see that school takes up the greatest percentage of our budget, police next, then fire, and then very, very little budgets for, well, of course, public works is smaller than I think a lot of people would be surprised to see this slide actually, that public works is not bigger given the great need we have for improvements. But so you can see how small the other budgets are in comparison to the school, police, and fire. Next slide. And so now we'll just talk about the public school budget. So we get aid from, we are hoping to get aid from the state in $273 million approximately, from the city 135, 816, and then other budget revenue. Next slide. So again, this is the police budget compared to some of our other neighborhood programs. So right now we have the police budget being the blue, we have the Human Relations Commission, the neighborhood parks, traffic engineering. We're just trying to give you an idea of how large this budget is compared to some of the other things that are of great importance to this city and to the community. Next slide. Within the police budget, we have this graph broken down so you can see how much is being spent in salaries, benefits, services, and supplies from 2018 to the proposed budget for 2021. So you can see how those have increased. Just so you know, we have 427 police officers, and the salaries, of course, and the benefits make up most of the police budget. Next slide. This is a Target 12 investigation pie that shows you again how much of the police budget is allocated to salaries, 41 million, benefits of 37 million, services 5.8 million, and supplies 1.8 million. So it's for the total budget of 85.6 million for the police. Next slide. So this is the pension problem. So as all of you are well aware, we have a over $1 billion pension problem, which is going to be it is a significant issue and will be even a greater issue as we look into the future, particularly with the Supreme Court decision that came down this past week, which ruled in favor of the retirees and really closed the door for a lot of the remedies that we would have had to fix the pension. And so we have to understand that even when we have these budget discussions, the overlying cloud or the overlying cloud is this $1 billion. I'm sorry, can everyone mute? Thank you. Is this pension problem? So we it's going to be quite difficult to continue to balance our budget and meet the needs of the city. So I think this has been a problem for a very long time. It hasn't been solved, and it is going to be an increasing problem, pretty severe over the next 5 to 7 years. So I think everyone has to keep that in mind when they're even looking at the budget at all. Next slide. And finally, this is the total officers for similarly sized cities. So I realize it's quite, again, we have 427 police officers. You can follow down below is the city by population. And if you can see the Providence, we have approximately 180,000 people. And so if you look at other cities that are our size, that have, in other words, Chattanooga, Newport News, Tempe, Arizona, are cities that have a similar number of the police officers. Okay, next slide. I think that may be the last slide. I don't know if Nirva has...
That is the last slide.
Thank you, Billy. I don't know if Nirva has anything she'd like to add to this conversation.
What I wanted to add is that, as you can see, and I just want to be clear that we didn't add all of the city departments. We just wanted to highlight some of the key departments, and also highlight the amount of money the departments in which we spend most of our resources in. And as you can see, education is one. And the police department is our second largest expenditure. And also when you look at how we're spending money, majority of that funding is going into salaries and benefits including pensions. Mm-hmm. So that's also something to take into consideration. But when you look at the percentage that's actually being spent on services, it's quite low. And so what this is showing us as well is there may be a bit of imbalance in the way that we're spending within that department. And also when you look at other city departments, we're not investing as much. I don't know if you saw the one of the departments that we listed, or one of the initiatives that we listed was First Source. And there are many people who don't know about this program, but the First Source program is supposed to be an opportunity for people to sign up for jobs. That is a unit that's underfunded. We don't really have enough people who are actually monitoring it. Part of the TSA agreements is that any person who's receiving, or any developer who's receiving a TSA, one of the things that they should do is also hire from First Source. Part of the challenge is that people are saying that they're not getting picked. They signed up, they've been on the list for many years. What we hear is that, we need people who are trained in these positions, but there's no training component. And so we're really not creating opportunities for our community members. Not only do they not have access to these opportunities or jobs, but they're also not being trained to prepare for them. So we really need to, if we want to build our city's wealth as well as infrastructure, we need to invest in the people, and we're not doing that right now. We're also not investing enough in the housing fund. We all know that our state in general has a significant housing shortage. We will have one of the oldest housing stocks in the country. The state of Rhode Island spends less than $5 per person on housing, where Massachusetts spends $99 per person on housing. And so again, there's another gap. So we really need to support our communities, and we're not doing that right now. John, do you want to add anything?
I would certainly just agree with everything that has been said. I think that being said, our law enforcement budgets are largely made up of personnel related costs, and the police department spends about 91% of its $85.6 million operating budget on salaries, pensions, and health benefits, with the remaining, 7.6 divvied up across services and departmental supplies like guns and ammunitions. So, as taxpayers, we have to evaluate, is the money that we're spending on policing worth it? Now, that's a question that everyone has to ponder individually, but what I can tell you is there are lots of people who at this time, given the amount of money, the amount that we're spending on policing and the services that we're getting, question whether or not that's a worthwhile investment. And so, there are lots of people who, based on our conversations, feel like the police aren't in many ways serving them and don't feel safe calling the police. And I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone, but this is something that we need to discuss. And that's something that we're certainly going to engage in tonight.
Cool. Shay, do you want to take us to the next space?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Councilwoman LaFortune, Goncalves, and Anthony.
Shay, can I just mention one more thing about the budget? So, with COVID-19 and everything that's happening, what it's also showing us is that there is opportunity for people to be able to work remotely. And I think this is a great opportunity for the city of Providence to welcome people into our city. Particularly those who live in Boston or New York, because what we're realizing is that you don't necessarily have to work where you live in many industries. And so rather than live in a city as expensive as Boston or New York, you can actually live in Providence and commute once a month or twice a month. Now that we're going to have the commuter rail that'll be located in the Pawtucket Providence line, it'll provide more opportunity or another form of transportation or access to get to Massachusetts. And so we are well positioned in many ways to welcome new industries for economic opportunities. But if we're not investing in planning so that we're looking at corridors like North Main Street and looking at potential development where we can have inclusionary zoning and mixed income housing, or investing in economic opportunities where we can work with various industries to bring their jobs here in our city, we'll have a hard time really building up the economic infrastructure of our city. And so I personally believe that we need to take a critical look at our budget and to figure out how can we, one, invest more in the services that our citizens, our residents deserve, and two, how can we invest in the city as a whole to ensure that we're prepared for opportunities that might come in the future. Thank you, Shay.
Thank you, Nirva. Okay, so I'm gonna move us into a different mindset now so we can process everything that we've received and also just do a little bit of a reflection of why defund. Right before we enter the space of re-envisioning what a new budget for a Providence would look like, where we will actually look at the budget and allocate and decide what our priorities are. So let's just take a moment to follow me with this short slideshow. I'm just going to show this because I found it a really great way that a community member, an artist, spoke to the priorities of why we're having all these conversations. I'm going to share screen. Great. So I'm just going to quickly present. Please feel free to look at the screen or just follow my voice, whichever way you feel you would like to engage, because Zoom meetings are sometimes can be overwhelming. So why defund? The goal of defunding is to reimagine, like Nirva had said, stronger social service networks and a world without police. I'll share, after this meeting, we can also share a few more reading resources if folks are interested. So I'm going to read through this statement by Gregory Flores, Afterwardness on Instagram, because it really tells the story of why this is important. So please follow my voice. Defunding the police means refunding social services. Through the last several decades, social service funding has been gutted, and those jobs and dollars have been outsourced to an unqualified police force. Instead of having a variety of well-funded tools to handle all the social problems we face, we now have one overfunded tool, the police. In some cities, funding for programs and nonprofits working in crisis intervention and prevention are being cut. In other cities, it's mental health funding, addiction services, hospital budgets. And in many others, school lunch programs, after-school programs, and schools themselves are taking the hit. Meanwhile, police force budgets keep increasing, like we've seen in Providence. Every year in the past few years, the budgets have increased. The problem is, when the only tool you have is a jail cell, every problem becomes an inmate. When the only tool you have is a gun, every problem becomes a target. With no better way to handle these issues, poverty, addiction, and mental health become criminalized, as do many of the other manifestations of our broken systems. Using the cover of these social issues, the state furthers their violence against Black bodies in the name of law and order. Defunding the police will not end racist policing, but it is a first step toward removing some of the power and presence they wield against Black members of our community. What we get in return by investing in social services is proper care for folks most in need, those who are unhoused or in poverty, those who are struggling with addiction or mental health trauma, better schools, and safer streets. Issues that are faced overwhelmingly by our communities of color due in no small part to racist policing. By moving resources away from police, whose budgets often account for 1/3 or more of cities' entire budgets, and toward social services, we all benefit. Police no longer have to manage a myriad social problems, and those in need receive care that actually benefits instead of criminalizes them. So when you read calls to defund the police, know that it is not a radical idea. It is simply moving resources to where the needs of our community actually exist. So what's the goal of this? The goal is to enter as a community together into a gradual process of reallocating these resources over time, to fund and taking those resources, funding, and responsibilities away from the police and toward community-based models of safety, support, and prevention. And we know in Providence, there's such a beautiful and powerful network of social service providers and organizations and community leaders that are experts in a lot of these things. So I wanted to show this. A resource that y'all can look up if you're interested is MPD 150. They did a lot of work and do a lot of work in Minnesota and have compiled information and resources. That's something I'll share with you all after the meeting, but just putting this out there. And I just want to put a little center on this. To really fight crime, we don't need more cops. We need more jobs, more educational opportunities, more arts programs, more community centers, more mental health resources, and more of a say in how our own communities function. So I really want to thank the 3 council people that we are sharing space with. It's a total honor to open space because we are all called to be better residents and better citizens by understanding how these processes work so we can have a voice. And I want to close this off with a quote from Adrienne Marie Brown. Why do we do these things in the first place? Well, my hope, she put it in the best way, is that we all can create an abundance of futures, of ways to manage resources together, to be brilliant together. To me, that's what democracy actually means, when we actually get to say, where do we want our resources invested? So close us off, imagine a world without police. We live in a society where almost every social problem, from noisy neighbors to broken taillights, has become a point of police intervention. The result is an epidemic of harassment and violence. But what if we found other ways to solve our issues? What if we rolled back police power and abolished the institution entirely? Here you are invited to think and act with other visionaries and find ways to achieve a police-free world. that's what I wanted to share as like a little bit of inspiration so that we can flex our muscles and jump into the budget reallocation process. So, Vadik, do you have anything you want to share? Should we jump right in? Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run us through this form, this spectacular nerdy form. I'm such a nerd and I love forms, Google Forms. So I'm going to show you this form. I'm going to walk it through with you all, because then we're going to break out in groups with each of the facilitators. And, you know, all your questions, you can bring them up and we'll fill out the forms together. If folks filled out the forms before the meeting, I think you can still edit, but if not, we can figure it out. So let me share screen again. Okay, all right. Re-envisioning a people's budget for Providence. All right, so we've actually been doing these meetings in multiple wards, and this one is the mega meeting with everyone in different wards. So please mark the ward that you're from, and afterwards, are you filling this out as part of a community forum or on your own? Please click community forum. We're just sending this out to other folks as well outside the forum. Here's an image, a really brief snapshot of the budget, just to refresh your memory. So you can see like some of the allocations. And then, so this is split into two parts. The first part is what would you immediately cut from the police budget? So these are line items in the police budget, and we want you all to see what the money is going toward and how much, and to actually go through the act of clicking. Well, yeah, you know, right off the bat, I want to eliminate equestrian unit supplies and guns and ammunition. You know, just feel free to click what you think is your priority, because this action is important as like we learn together. And of course, salaries, yes. Okay, so how would you reallocate the 88 million attributed to the police budget? So if we actually had those 88 million, what would be your priority in reallocating that? I don't want us to do any math, like any hard math. This is just an exercise to help us know what your priorities are as residents and to what scale. So for example, public school and education. Well, yeah, I think that's really important. I would allocate like $1 to $2 million in favor of that. Social workers. Okay, social workers are great, but we do have to do some work around equity when social workers. So, you know about this. After school programming, super important. Public art. Hell yeah to public art. Youth employment. Oh my God, yes. 5 to 8 million if possible. So it's really to get us into the space of a heart of what are our priorities as a community, just so you don't feel overwhelmed with math. You know, affordable housing. Oh my God, if we had more affordable housing, so many problems would be so much better. So just that's the kind of like energy that I hope that you bring into the forum. And lastly, what other ideas and programs do you recommend? Do you have ideas of ways that, you know, we can improve our communities that should be considered when thinking about a budget process? So that's basically it. Everyone we count on an amazing group of co-facilitators, so feel free to ask them questions. And yeah, I think we can split into groups. Yeah? Yes? No?
Yeah, Billy, how are we on the, I know we have one facilitator that couldn't make it. How are we on the breakout rooms?
So I will have to reallocate people when we go into breakout room, so you're just going to have to bear with me for a few minutes.
Okay.
While I do that. Okay? So we're going to do the breakout rooms, if I can find them.
And
there
so,
it is.
Yeah, okay, and everybody has, the facilitator should have the form, but everybody has the form in your email as well, so you can go ahead and pull that up.
I'm going to share it on the chat. Here it is. Great. And also, it's time check 6 p.m. We're going to have, how much time do we have for the breakout rooms? Do we have the full 20 or 15?
Let's do 20.
20. Okay, so we have 20 minutes. And then each facilitator will get a 5-minute warning or something like that. So then we can debrief.
And so those that aren't in a room, I will push them into a room once it starts.
Okay. Thank you, Billy.
Okay? I'm going to open all the room. Take a breath.
See you all.
Did you all go into room? Breakout rooms in progress. Unassigned. Yep. Okay. Shay, you should be in a room. Why am I seeing you?
I'm in a room.
Okay.
Thanks to everyone for your patience. We usually get 60-something people in the meetings, but this one is like 100 and something people. So thanks for waiting.
So let me close all the rooms again, and then just give me 1 minute, please.
While you're waiting,
I don't know why people didn't.
I was just gonna add, while everyone's waiting, just feel free to take a look at the form. If you want to start filling it out, you can do so as well.
Was the form sent to our emails?
It is sent to the emails, and I'm putting it back in the chat now. Did we get pulled back from our breakout rooms?
Yes.
We did.
We did, because people didn't go into rooms, and people that are hosting rooms were not in the room. So I had to close them and try it one more time.
Okay.
Best laid plans.
Mm-hmm. Who would have thought we'd
Okay,
be
I'm opening the rooms again.
Virtual world now.
Virtual world.
Are people in rooms?
Yes.
Some folks are.
Got kicked out. Shut down the whole thing.
Not in a room.
How do you know you're in a room?
Okay.
How do you know you're in a room?
Because there would be some indication. And then you would hit that indication. And then you'd be in that room.
Yeah, a little window is supposed to pop up.
Well, since I'm using a cell phone, I'm probably not going to go to a room. I don't know.
Just give me a second. I have to do it manually. I apologize, everybody.
Take your time.
Thank you, Billy.
When I look for that form, what do I look for? Who is it from?
It's from us.
Well, I have nothing listed as from us.
Yeah.
We'll I'll post it again. If you look in the chat, just click on the chat tab and I will repost the form so that way it'll be easy to find.
Signed, okay. Signed 2. Councilwoman LaFortune, why are you not in the room that you're supposed to be in?
I don't know.
Assigned to your room.
Got it.
Are you in a room?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm moving as fast as I can, folks.
I don't know what Department of Defense, but Department of Defense vote.
Where's Shay?
Hi, Steve.
Hey.
Do you have the form already?
I was just gonna watch. I felt as a reporter I should just be watching.
Let's move. That what you do is somewhere. Just want to have.
That Renee speaking?
It is. Hello, yes.
Hello, Renee. What were you saying?
Am I supposed to be able to submit this?
Yes,
or
if
just
you would,
have it?
if you would submit your form and press submit on it, everybody, if you're done with it, press that submit button. And Steve, what were you saying?
Oh, I'm really just going to be observing. I'm not going to be contributing right now. But
sounds good.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I think that we can come back now. Oh, look at April in the tropics. Okay. So we can come back now. I'm outside, so there might be outside noises, so we have to live with that. But I just want to open it up and allow for folks to kind of go by one. And if you would, like, before you say the thing that you felt was really strongly you want money to go into, before you do that, if you would just introduce yourself, say your name, your pronouns, and then maybe like where you live, like what ward, and then kind of go into like when you're looking at the reallocation process, what was something that you feel passionately needs to be funded to help in this conversation around public safety. So is there a person I want to go first?
I'll go first.
All right, April.
All right, so my name is April Brown, and you asked for my pronouns, she, hers, and I'm sorry, I dazed what else you said after that. What else?
Tell us like where you live.
Okay, so I live in Providence. I live in Carmen Castillo's ward between Elmwood and Broad Street. And in the form, what was really interesting just about the whole process was just really being able to see the budget broken down and really understanding how underfunded for me personally education is. And when we talk about education, for me, what I feel like doesn't have enough funding is the early childhood education, the early intervention for when children first get into systematic approaches of how they're going to be in community, right? And I feel like that's where a lot of money can be spent, so that when you talk about the prison to school pipeline, you can eliminate some of that, right? I worked for Head Start for a few years when I came back home, and I just understand that when we talk about public schooling, the idea in Head Start is there are wraparound services. So when you get a student, you don't just get the student, you get the family, and the family comes with the student. And I just feel like that's an approach that when we talk about public schooling as a whole all around the world, if we took that approach, you wouldn't need to have public safety policing the same way. Okay, I'm going to mute myself.
Awesome. Thanks, April. And Mara, just hi, welcome to the group. Wondered if you were able to fill out the form already?
I haven't started, but I haven't submitted.
Okay, so yeah, once you can go ahead and finish that up while we already kind of started our conversation. So you can go ahead and fill that out, and we're asking folks to talk about what is like something that they wanted to fund. Like what is like a passion thing that they saw and was sticking out for them. And April just went and talked about early childhood education. I see people that are still joining. If you haven't done the form, go ahead and fill that out and then press submit. Maureen, you're on deck to share with us. Who would like to be after Maureen? Yeah? I don't see anybody else.
Well, there are actually
all right, cool. Then we'll have Helen. So we'll have Maureen, then Helen, all right? And there are two people right there with Maureen. There's another person as well.
Yeah, my husband's sitting in the couch, so.
Sounds great.
He'll introduce himself, though. I'm Maureen Reddy. She, hers. I live in Nirva LaFortune's ward in Providence. And frankly, I thought everything listed that was a better place to put our money than the police or any element of that. But for me, the three most important things, I think, and then hearing April talk, I thought, oh yeah, education too. But the three for me would be about houselessness. So support for houseless people, affordable housing, and eviction, moratorium, protection, etc. So those three things seem to me, at this moment, incredibly crucial. And let me back out and I'll let Doug introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Douglas Best, and he, him. For me, the important part would be the funding for after school and for arts education, and as well as for the home housing situation, affordable housing.
Awesome. Thank you both for that. And Helen, would you like to share now?
Yes, certainly. I think education, I agree with. I mean, I think unless we can provide a good quality education to all the citizens of Providence, we are not doing the job we need to do. Education is the key, I think, to people being able to get jobs, have housing. So I'm very passionate about education, but equally affordable housing, because if we can't house our citizens, then that is, again, erodes our society. People can't function, they can't work, they can't feed themselves, they don't know, it should be a housing, everyone should be able to afford housing here. And we are just woefully behind as a city in our affordable housing, and we're just not putting the funding toward it. So I'm very passionate about those two issues.
Thank you, Helen. So we're gonna go to Lauren and then maybe Renee.
Great. My name is Lauren. I live in Ward 1, and in looking at the list, I highly rated education, public schools, but also affordable housing, which people have already spoken to, and then also mental health, because I think that a lot of several issues come to head when people do not get the help that they need, and or the help comes in the form of the police.
Thanks, Lauren. So we're going to do Renee and then Steve. Do you want to share after that?
Hi, I'm Renee. I live in Ward 2, and I was easily overwhelmed by all of the choices for investments. But for me, thinking about it very pragmatically, I think the first thing we need is really is alternatives to problem solving right now. So if we imagine we cut the police force, we have to imagine what are the options right there in the moment for conflict resolution and problem solving. And so to me, that's more about investment in community organizing, investment in mental health resources, maybe in youth engagement. Because I feel like we would have a real gap if we lost the police today, because we wouldn't know how to solve the problems that can get out of control and absolutely don't need to get out of control.
Thank you. That was well said. Thank you for that, for sharing that that thought. Steve, did you want to share? And then we'll go to Nate.
Which Steve? Vadik.
Oh, so the other Steve is observing. So you're the Steve of the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Steve Wellmeyer. I'm in Ward 2. And it's very interesting to see some of the budget line items. I haven't really looked at those. And I'd be very interested, maybe Helen could enlighten us a bit more on the pension issue. This seems to be a serious problem, and it's a lot of money is going into that, and will continue to do so unless something is resolved in this area. And so I'd be curious about that, how that's going to be resolved. The other general comment is it's very difficult for me to sit here and for years and years and years, the city council and the mayor's offices have worked diligently on these budgets and put a lot of time and effort into these budgets. And it's very naive of me to come in and think that I know better, or I can just imagine some allocation of money that they've been thinking about for decades and making very tough decisions over the years in this area. And yes, the police budget has grown, but if you would every year talk to the city council and to the mayor's office, they would probably have very good reasons for that. So it's an interesting exercise, but I feel like I don't know enough now to make a leap of faith and give you my own ideas about, where more of the police budget should go and be reallocated.
So can I hop in and just I'll share this. So I think that there is this thing that we're conditioned to if we're not an expert on something, then we shouldn't weigh in at all because we don't want to be wrong. But there's also this law of averages where you can take a group of people and everybody can look at a jar of jelly beans, right? And we can all guess at it, and there'll be high answers, there'll be low answers, but that average answer is going to be the right answer. So that's what we're doing here. We're trying to get as many responses as possible so we can get to that average and be at that right answer. So I appreciate you sharing that thought, Steve. And now we're going to move to Nate and then Jillian. Would you want to share?
Hey, y'all. Nate Levin Aspenson reporting in from Ward 3. I live over here by Lippert Park. My pronouns are he, him. I was also thinking about kind of the community's immediate needs and public safety, and that immediately led me to thinking about housing and employment, because there's so much going on, and of course also we're living in a pandemic and we're about to hit this huge eviction crisis. I'm thinking about what's going to keep people safe is keeping them in homes, and making sure that we don't have a wave of people who become homeless this summer and this fall. And part of that is going to be housing guarantees and affordable housing, and part of that may be, public works or job guarantees or things like that. But it's going to take some innovative solutions that I think the police are not equipped to provide.
Thanks, Nate, for that analysis. We're going to go to Jillian, and then after that, Courtney, would you like to share?
I'm Jillian. My pronouns are she, her. I'm on Hope Street in Ward 3. And yeah, I think I was kind of amazed at how much money was going to equestrian care. But in terms of like looking at the reallocation, I echo, I think, all the sentiments, affordable housing, and like funding for, you know, houseless people and ways to get people to, you know, prevent eviction with this incoming flood of evictions was heavy on my mind. I think also I appreciated that COVID relief was on there, because I sort of didn't even think about that connection of like that reallocated police fund could go to COVID relief, which is a really pressing issue. And I think also climate mitigation stuck out to me, because I think it's something that is often, it's a lot harder to see the connection between, you know, climate crisis and, you know, issues that Black and Indigenous folks face, as well as working class people. And I think that it is something that, I don't know what intermediate reallocation to that would look like, but it was something that also stood out to me.
Thanks, Jillian, for those thoughts. So we have Courtney, if you want to share, and then after that we'll have Mara and Rochelle to end this off.
Hey everyone, my name is Courtney. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I live in Mount Hope in Ward 3, and I'm really thankful for this conversation. I guess I've been thinking a lot about how I grew up in Providence, and now I'm back here for grad school, and I've been thinking about how, the police cause a lot of harm here, and what we really need is some like community nourishment. And so I kind of stand, and also the police limit our ability to imagine what Providence can look like. So, and in order to imagine that, we need a lot of just kind of really basic things. So I support everyone talking about housing. I also want to advocate for mental health. Especially no evictions in this weird COVID time. So yeah, and then schools. My housemates work in the public schools here, and just anything that goes towards Black and brown youth would be super helpful.
Thank you for that, Courtney. So Mara and then Rochelle.
Hey, thank you for facilitating. I went straight for the salary. That's where the money is. So how do we have fewer people on that salary roll? And where we would put that as education and housing kind of my view. And then I would be curious what people think about social workers. I really went back and forth on that piece, because I know that sort of the more interaction that families have, the more likely they are to get wrapped up in a system that can be really inequitable. So I was really torn on whether I'd want to see more funding in that particular area.
Cool. Thank you, Mara. Oh, sorry, you broke up a little bit at the end there. Was there more to add, Mara? No. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts around, like, you know, state in interactions and like reallocating and not wanting to cause harm. Thank you for bringing that up. Rochelle.
Yes. Actually, I did my form before the meeting, so I think I'll just go by, you know, my general thoughts. But I reallocated a lot from salaries to public education. Obviously, that does not include police in the schools, public safety officers, whatever they call themselves. I do think that we need to spend more money right now, immediately, in terms of mental health supports, assistance to the homeless community. And I think, you know, we have some environmental issues that I feel like we need to get started on in a robust manner. So I put money into environmental issues as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Rochelle, for that. Thank you to everybody for the thoughts. I think it is time for us to go back and join the larger group. So you should be able to press leave breakout room in like the upper left-hand corner. You should be able to like click leave, but leave breakout room, not leave meeting. And we'll go back to the regular room. Cool? Everybody see that? All right, I'll see y'all in a second.
All right.
Good.
Other folks out of the room if they're not already coming back, if that's cool.
All right, I'm gonna close them out.
All right, they get like a 1 minute though, right?
Yep.
All right, give them like at least a minute, then they'll get pulled back from here.
Yeah, it takes a minute.
Listen, it was so funny. Susan was talking about the guy who she's dating and how they have a dog. And that
Somebody's not on mute unless you want us to hear, but I'd love to hear it. Cool, Kate. You all did good. Got through.
A lot of people didn't get to speak, so I'm going to ask them to please put it in the chat if they would.
In the chat, and then we can take a little bit of time now when we debrief to like if you want to call on some of those folks, Kate, Shay, if you all didn't get through everybody speaking. Yeah?
Yeah, that sounds good. Vadik, would you facilitate the debrief?
Yeah, I will work to do that. So this is what we're going to do, folks, as everybody's coming back into the room. We're going to ask the facilitators to, I know some people didn't get to share in the room, so we want to try to get folks' voices so they can share what they wanted to reallocate into. So I think we're going to start with Kate's group, and if you want to facilitate a couple of folks that didn't get to share for like a minute to 30 seconds, some thoughts, some concise thoughts.
If we can find Praveen, I'd like to hear from you. Just because you didn't talk in any part of it, if you feel like sharing it.
Yeah, of course. So I took the approach of, in an ideal world, I took funding of all the ways, and I funded. I gave at least a little bit of funding to everything. I think one thing that we didn't discuss, but I'd like to see some funding go towards, is a community-led public safety sort of crisis response team. One that's like rooted in the community, totally independent from police department, and is not funded by cutting from existing community programs.
Thank you. Grace, you also wanted to speak, I think, if you are here.
And I just want to invite people to mute themselves if they're not speaking. It'll help for the speaker for us to hear them without an echo.
Hello, I'm Grace. I live in Ward 1, if that matters. I'm coming from this, I'm coming at this issue of defunding the police from an abolitionist standpoint, which means I think that the policing and the prison system should just be gone entirely. And I know that's really scary to a lot of people, because what happens when interpersonal violence happens and crime, right? But we have to look at the things that cause people to commit crimes and violence and solve those social issues by allocating resources to things like education and healthcare and housing. And I think when we look at what policing and the prison system does, as Angela Davis said, those systems don't solve problems and they don't prevent problems, they disappear them into the prison system. And in fact, these prisons become sites where violence happens, very disproportionately. It's just that like we don't see it happen, but it is still happening. And when people are released from prisons, they're trapped in cycles of poverty, and like they're not able to like get jobs, and like they're trapped like in social situations where they have to keep committing crimes. And so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So like that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Grace. Sorry, I'm just typing into the chat what people are saying so that if people have audio problems, you can hear them. Anyway, there we go. Anyone else who didn't get to speak in our group or their group and would like to take this time just to get, if your voice didn't get heard and you have something that you want to make sure you say. Nico, I don't think you got to talk. Want to? Nico Page. And talk? Anybody else want to talk?
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, all good.
I was just washing my hands. Let me turn my camera on.
And then Jarson after that.
Oh, perfect.
So, yeah, I think what we were doing in our group was sort of choosing one thing to justify why we would take funds from, and then one thing that we would reallocate that to. And I really echo coming from an abolitionist standpoint, where I see sort of defunding as a way of gradually reducing the size of the police until we don't actually need it because we have preventative programs and community safety. So I really appreciate people who have spoken about that. And I think coming from that, as well as a very practical standpoint, I was trying to think about just sort of cutting things that feel the most urgent, namely guns and ammunition and officer salaries, and then reinvesting in my top three were climate mitigation, affordable housing, and education. In terms of those three sort of, for me, working together to ensure our futures, ensure that people are housed, and ensure that people are getting educated and getting the opportunities that they deserve in order to not end up in the prison industrial complex. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico. And then Jerson, you wanted to go?
Hey everyone, my name is Jerson Essensau. I live in Ward 1. And for me, the biggest focus has always been that public schools are like really jokes compared to like most private education. And I went to a public school. I went to Johnston High School, and I've heard of the like education programs that are offered to kids in like very like well-esteemed private schools that offer all of these alternative classes. They get them into coding. They get them into all sorts of opportunities that like most kids in our public school system don't have, because pretty much the only thing our public school systems focus on, aside from maybe the Met High School, is Common Core, like math,
so I'm in
those things. And I really feel like, but if we want these kids to be growing up into positive environments, we need to be taking more innovative looks at what a public school system would look like in terms of educating kids.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, you have more? Sorry. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that input. I guess I'll ask if there are other from the other facilitators, would folks like to just kind of maybe, share either in the chat or right now for like a minute or so, like round out what was being said in your group. And then we're going to go to Shay, and then Shay's going to share information from the forums, because everybody already pressed submit, I hope, and we can kind of look at the results as collectively. Darcy or Nick, anybody else from the other facilitation, Nirva, so I want to share some stuff out.
I'm not being my guy, so I'll leave it to Shay.
Yeah, we were in the same group, Darcy and I. How lucky are we? But some folks did share some really great thoughts and everything. Sam and Ron, if you would like to share anything via unmuting yourself and sharing it, or on the chat, full power, would be amazing to hear your voice because we didn't get to hear. So.
Yeah, I'll hop in. Really, I would just want to echo so many of the things that have been said already, and where a lot of my thoughts go on this are just about how many events that the police show up to that they're just so poorly equipped to handle, and that we need all of these other programs, this whole list, in addition to sort of many other specific response, community-based response teams, mental health response teams, addiction trained response teams would be so much more critical and compassionate and ultimately helpful than the system that we have now. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. And Ron, would you like to share?
Yeah, I don't know that I have much of value to add, other than what's already really been said a lot. And the things that have really spoken to my heart, one would be that a budget is a moral document. And then when I think of what the late Congressman Elijah Cummings said about our children are messengers to a future that we will never see, that just always is on my mind, especially around anything revolving the civic. And that just being said, the amount of money that is being given to after school programs, that is being given to ensuring then that these youth, that these messengers to the future that we won't see, ensuring that they have housing, ensuring that they have all of these things that really matter and are important. That's, I think it's just it's a morality thing, and we just need to be conscious of that, and that's all I have.
Cool. Thanks, Shay. Thanks, Ron. Nirva, did you want to share?
Sure. We got cut off in the middle of our conversation, but some of the things that came up is people were really surprised in the amount of money that we're investing in just our horses, and not enough funding being spent in training for the police departments, but more is being invested in ammunition. What some members of the community said was that they want to see more funding in affordable housing, as well as education opportunities. There are a couple of people we didn't hear from. Anna had her name up. But we didn't hear from her, and perhaps Mr. Elliott, who's been a long time Rhode Island Providence resident, and Tyler, or anybody else.
So what caught my eye was the Department Defense budget. If I understand it correctly, it's money that goes to the lawyers and sort of protecting against lawsuits. And I don't know what our city's numbers are, but I've read about other cities that pay obscene amounts into the defense of police who have harmed someone. I mean, just obscene amounts. And so I'm wondering if we're paying that as taxpayers, and why that shouldn't maybe come out of the police, out of their pensions, perhaps.
So the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, one of the things that it states is that a police officer who's under investigation or requires any legal representation, I believe the department has to pay 50% of their legal costs. So that is a state statute that is indicated within the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. And so that's one of the reasons why I put in a resolution asking the state to repeal and hopefully amend the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. I know that Rep. Williams has been working on this for many years. The League of Cities and Towns also had put in recommendations to amend it. So that is a major issue, and it requires us, unfortunately, to pay those fees. Anyone else? Mr. Elliott?
Yes, ma'am.
So any thoughts? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
think some of that money from the police department ought to be spent on education, especially for children that are in kindergarten and the first grades, to enlighten them a little more and give them a little more insight on what's going on in their schools and in their community, in the state, and with the police also, how they connect on everything.
And there was a question earlier about, in comparison to the police department, how many teachers that we have. We do have the largest school district in the state, so we have over 23,000 students who are within the Providence Public School District, and we have about a little over 2,000 teachers. But again, a lot of the spending is on salaries and benefits. But we do need to prioritize initiatives and programming to better support our students. The Pell Institute put out a report a few years ago basically saying that student socioeconomic background is a determinant of their outcomes. And if we know that majority of our students are students who receive free and reduced lunch, which is an indicator of poverty or socioeconomics, then we do need to be able to supplement their learning through after-school programs, through additional resources, through training to support our teachers in educating such a diverse population of students, including our English language learners. And so we really do need to think about investing in our kids' education, which is the future of our city and state. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all for that. There's also, Nick has shared a debrief in the chat from their group, if you want to go ahead and look at that. And then we're just going to pass it now to Shay, and then to like share the results from like the forum, because everybody press submit, I hope. And then we're going to talk about next steps and talk with the council people about next steps.
All right. Everyone press submit, yeah? Good? All right. I'm loving this. All right, let's see real time what this looks like. This is the third meeting, so, and I'm still missing some data from a separate meeting. So these are the results from two meetings, this one and the Kat Kerwin meeting, just so you all know. Okay, so we have 128 responses, and this is a representation of the wards that have been in those meetings, multiple spaces. Some folks did fill it on their own. So some of the things that came up, what would you immediately cut from the police budget? Some of the top ones have been the officer salaries, the guns and ammunition, about 85 people voted for that one. Professional equestrian care, that was a top one too, and equestrian unit. So back to Councilwoman LaFortune's point about how much money we're spending on horses. Some of the other ones were Department of Defense Fund. So that's what we have on that. And then how would you reallocate? I'm just gonna read the amounts that got the top number of people allocating. So education and public schools, about 65 people said that 10 plus million. That's definitely risen up as a big priority. Social workers, about 31 people said 2 to 5 million. After school programming, 35 people, 2 to 5 million. So it's like you can see the cluster of variety of responses. Public art too, we got some variety here, but mostly 500,000 to 1 million or 1 to 2 million. COVID relief, that one was a priority for a bunch of folks. So 5 to 8 million, or 27 people said 10 million plus. I mean, we are living in a really important moment. Youth employment, 2 to 5 million, 31 folks, 29. So just so you get a sense of like how much. 39 folks voted mental health, 5 to 8 million. Affordable housing, tons of people, 59 said 10 plus million. Alternative transportation is like pretty average here on the amount of folks, wide variety of responses. Addiction treatment too. Houseless support, the majority got 5 to 8 million by 30 people. So this is just like a quick snapshot Eviction defense, 1 to 2 million. Climate mitigation, 5 to 8. Community run spaces, 1 to 2. And others. Oh, I'm interested in that. 45. So then we have a slew of ideas that community members have shared. Everything from gardens and agriculture for food security, more support for COVID, anti-racism training for all police department employees and relevant partners. Let's see. So many amazing things. Parks and libraries, top priorities to invest in public schools, mental health, employment, social work, affordable housing. So I'm hoping that after this process, we get to share all these things so people can read through this with more time, because it's a lot of information. But yeah, job creation, civics training, early childhood education. Wow, I mean, this is all incredible stuff. Climate mitigation is a priority, but I don't think it should be locally funded. We'd love to see more social workers and addiction support. Free universal daycare. Wow, that's pretty cool. I don't have kids, but that sounds amazing.
You might go out and get some if you had some free.
I'm thinking about it. I'm going to take my time on that. All right, so yeah, so that's a slew of things. It's so incredible to see all your ideas, everyone. Thanks so much for putting the time and energy to fill this out. And yeah, I mean, I think that's it for me. I'm going to pass it off to the folks who are leading the debrief so we can unwind the next steps.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and thank you to all our facilitators and most importantly, the participants. Thank you for spending some time with us this evening and sharing your ideas. This is what we want. It's useful, beneficial, and it'll also give us an idea of things that we should be advocating for. I will say, Councilwoman Anthony and I, Helen and I, were talking the other day, and I said, I am embarrassed that we have not, like when you look at the graphs of how much money that's not being spent on some of our on social services, including like affordable housing, like a basic necessity, or opportunities to train people for jobs. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, and I was embarrassed that I felt like I wasn't doing enough to advocate for more resources to better support our communities. And so this will be very helpful in going forward in helping us design ordinances, helping us to think about how we should be spending our city budget, where allocations should go. And more importantly, this is a great opportunity for us to capture your voice. So if you did not have an opportunity to fill out the form, please do. We plan to look at every single one of them, to look at your responses, to look at your ideas, and figure out how we can incorporate it in policy and some of the decisions that we're making going forward. So thank you. So in terms of next step, I know that everyone is thinking about what are some things that we can do to affect change? How can we get more involved in the community? So one thing I want to say is that what I notice is that whenever it's a hot topic, that's when everyone is showing up to city council meetings or paying attention to the budget. It is really important for people to just understand the decisions that are being made at the city level as well as the state level, because ordinances and pieces of legislation is being passed. And in fact, I wasn't even aware of the power of the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights until I really started investigating, and I spoke with our Attorney General about like ideas and how we can reform the police, and he was like, but this still exists. And so, you know, there are things that we can't do because this piece of legislation is in place. And so it's really important for us just as a community to be educated and civically engage and participate in some of the decision-making process, and to just show up or look at the agenda. It's always located on the open meeting portal. So you can listen to the recordings, you can see what the agenda items are, or the docket items may be for that week, but it's and look at what's happening in the committees, because generally once it leaves the committee, that means it has a majority vote, and once it gets on the floor, some people might vote against it, but if it has the majority vote, it will pass. We saw what happened with Kane Tower, and some other things that was brought in front of the council that many community members were not in support of. So it's really important that you pay attention, not just what's happening in the city council meetings as a whole, but also what's happening in the finance committee, ordinance committee, public works, but pay attention to what's happening in the committee. The other thing is, I know there are a lot of people who've been picking up books to read. Reading is wonderful, and I know some people might start book clubs, but we also have to take action. The reading is important to understand the context and to have some level of history, but think about what are some community organizations that you can get involved with, and if you don't have the time to get involved, what can you support? We have groups like Amore that's supporting some of our immigrant and undocumented community, Dorcas International, which I'm a big supporter of, because before it merged with Dorcas and International Institute, it was International Institute, and that's how I was able to obtain my legal status to hopefully one day run for office, as I did. Various organizations that support our students, such as College Vision. During COVID-19, there were many students who were sent home. They didn't have the technology, they didn't have laptops, or they had balances on their bills. And I know that College Vision really supported them in trying to mitigate those issues. The Crusaders program, Providence Student Union. There are so many organizations, arts and theater organizations like Everett Theater, or other art groups. Providence After School Alliance. Those are all wonderful organizations that are supporting our young people, providing them with opportunities and pathways, and also supporting our most marginalized communities. There are some food banks in communities. There's one in Ward 3, Camp Street Ministries, Higher Grounds has been distributing food. So there's so much that you can do in Providence. There are many nonprofits in Providence that you can support. So you can sign up by volunteering, you can donate funds, you can tell people about it, but continue to advocate. But more importantly, hold your elected officials accountable. That's the most important thing. Hold them accountable, because once a decision is made, it's put into law, it's very hard to change. So hold your elected officials accountable. Ask them, what are they advocating for? What areas they want funding to be invested in, but hold them accountable. Helen, John, anything you want to add?
I would just like to add, thank you, Nirva. I think that was excellent. In terms of, there are a couple of takeaways I have. I'd just like to say, I'm looking at this whole policing issue with new eyes since we've had all these discussions. It's true that really every social problem has become a point of police intervention, which is what I think Shay said in her beginning. We have to think about things differently, how to do things differently with the budget, the monies that we have. And I'm very much supportive of, some reallocation, because, we really have tasked our police force with things that they were not trained to do and shouldn't be doing. So while I appreciate, our police force for sure for what they've done, they're just not trained to do what they're doing. And they're doing solving these social problems, and that shouldn't be their problem. That's our problem as a community, as a city to solve. So I'm looking at this with new eyes, and I think the budget is the perfect place. That's where the money is allocated. So I'm going to ask everyone the budget process is really, I also heard a gentleman in our small group that said, he's not an expert, either am I, and I'm on the finance committee. I really welcome people to attend the finance committee. What I'm really working hard on, and since I've been elected, is transparency and process. It's really, really, really important that people be able to understand the budget process and how it works, and also to influence it. So I am asking my colleagues who have been on city council much longer than I to please be more transparent and have those conversations on the finance floor, on the committee floor, where the public can attend the meetings, hear and understand what's going on, and then, participate. And so the great thing about what I just said in the beginning, the fact that we're going to extend our budget process, I would love people to attend the finance meetings. Right now it's great because they're on Zoom, so it's a lot easier. You can see it, you can listen to it, I really, really look forward to more people participating, and these further discussions, because we're at a time where change can happen, and I'm excited to be a part of it, but I can't do it if I don't know what you would like me to do. So thank you.
I have a quick question for the counselors, if that's okay. Cool. So I'm going to ask all of you respectively. I'll start with Counselor LaFortune. Will you commit right now to voting to defund the police? And if so, how much will you commit to defunding?
I am committed to reallocating funds from the police department into social services. I think in terms of the amount, I want to see what the community has stated, and also to look at the budget to see where the need exists, because I also want to be strategic about it. And to think about what areas within our city we need to support more. Affordable housing is a big thing. We have, again, as I stated earlier, we have a housing stock issue. We just don't have enough affordable housing in our city. We need safe, clean housing for our community members. So that's one area that I would love to see more investment go into. As a Providence public school individual, and who's a parent of one student who just graduated and another one who's going into 4th grade, I want to see more investment in our schools and in our students. Investment in programs that is supporting our students' academic achievement, that's supporting arts programs. I went to Nathaniel Green Middle School. We had a robust arts program, which I was exposed to ballet and theater through this initiative. I'm a kid from Southside Providence, an immigrant kid. I never went to the theater with my family. We couldn't afford those things. And so that was my exposure. And for many kids, it's transformative. So we have to invest in our youth. And also someone mentioned summer job opportunities, which is something I've continuously advocated for in the past. There's been efforts to cut that budget. Both Councilwoman Anthony and I have stood in support of it, and also our arts and culture department, because we also have a robust arts culture and community in Providence, and people live off of that, off of the art industry. And so we need to support it and to help it thrive. But more importantly, people need places to live in. And most of our community members are cost burden, which they're paying over 30% of their income in housing. And when we look at our city with a median income of $40,000, most people can't afford to live here.
Thank you so much for that answer. Same question goes for you, Councilor Anthony. Will you commit to voting against any budget proposed that does not defund the police? And if so, how much will you commit to defunding the police?
Okay, I am very supportive of reallocation of some of the police funds. I will say that directly. I can't give you the amount also at this point, just because I am still gathering information. I am very, very interested in, I will tell you, we had a meeting just the other night in finance on the Cahoots program in Eugene, Oregon. It was an interesting, we had several groups come in and present on some other Again, addressing these issues about not having police respond to social problems, creating some other model that could address those issues. That would be one of the things I'm looking at for sure, because I don't know whether it's a community response team. I don't want it to be based in public safety or the police department. I think it should be a community-driven response team. We have a wonderful network of nonprofits here that provide all sorts of mental health, homeless, all sorts of services. So I feel like we need to braid, coordinate, and align those services and try to figure out how to make sure that the police don't have to respond to those issues. So that's what I'm specifically looking at right now, but there may be other areas also, but I am in favor of reallocating some of the police budget.
Finally, same question to you, Councillor Goncalves.
Sure, so I'm committed, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I'm committed to doing that work, to reallocating police funding, like my colleagues have suggested, towards housing, homelessness, social services, jobs. We want our neighborhoods to be safe, secure environments for our children, our families, our seniors in our community, and we have to envision a world, ideally, without policing. And we're navigating a very complex political process. From a legality perspective, it's hard to do that. We're trying to address these issues in many different ways. But what I want to say is, we need to really center the conversation around our communities, and specifically our communities of color. So people, especially people of color and their white allies, are incredibly exhausted about the fatal collision between law enforcement and Black and brown Indigenous people of color in our society. They're tired of the legitimate trauma of, one too many African Americans being senselessly killed at the hands of police. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Atiana Jefferson, Tamir Rice, who else? Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, and many more. And these are people who have a lived experience of disadvantage and lack of investment. And in these cases, it results in death simply as a result of their color, the color of their skin. And we have to say enough is enough. George Floyd's death is a continuation of a long history of systemic injustice, discrimination, criminalization, and quite frankly, dehumanization of Black lives in our country since its founding. And so I think it's incumbent on us as local leaders, rooted in community, to undo this legacy of bigotry, and as Councilwoman LaFortune mentioned, a legacy of laws, and really examine our laws and create a future where our kids can learn and grow to lead lives of empathy without hate and fear of being different, in a future where kids aren't over-policed and they can live in a world free of racial tension and division, free of, bias and bigotry. So, based on what's been articulated tonight, it's quite simple. Instead of putting more funding into policing, trying to solve some of our social problems, as my colleague had just shared, we need to look at the city's budget, and we need to figure out more ways of investing in communities, especially marginalized communities. We need to think about effectively addressing the underlying challenges that contribute to what we call so-called crime, like poverty and homelessness. These things shouldn't be criminalized. And this would be achieved by, cutting these often astronomical budgets on a city level that are, dedicated towards policing, and think about how we fund social services. So, we need a holistic approach, and that is going to be conversation that we continue to have with members of our community. We need to think about social workers, trained psychologists, conflict interrupters, restorative justice teams who are better equipped with, people's mental illness and can mediate situation where no one's safety is being threatened. So, shifting resources towards addressing community needs isn't a radical idea. And so I think we have to, keep our head in the game. We have to fight as hard as we can, and I'm committed to doing that work.
I'm sorry, I just want to follow up, and this will be a quick follow-up, to all three of you, and then also Council President Matos. So I very much agree with the sentiments that all of you have expressed, but I just want to get a yes or no answer to this question, because your jobs in this specific community forum is to be accountable to voters and residents of your wards. Yes or no, Councillor Goncalves, will you commit to voting against any budget that does not reallocate funds from the police to other social services if it comes to a vote?
Can you repeat the question just one more time? I just want to make sure I have it correct.
So in your capacity as a council member, will you commit to voting against any budget that does not defund or take some funds from the police and reallocate them to social services for fiscal year 2021?
I will commit to voting against any budget that, yes.
Okay. Councillor Anthony?
Yes.
Councillor LaFortune?
Yes, it's not the first time I didn't vote in favor of the budget.
And Council President Matos?
Oh, she's not here.
She's not here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you should ask her that question as well.
I absolutely will.
Yeah. Thank you, Hal. So it's a little after 7, so I just want to kind of close it out. And again, thank everyone for participating. And this is nothing new. Our Black community in general have experienced various forms of inequity and racism throughout centuries. I recently was reading Souls of Black Folks by W.E.B. Du Bois, which is of Haitian descent like me, and he talks about the whole book is about what happened post Emancipation Proclamation, and basically what his argument is that nothing really was done to free the formerly enslaved, because the lack of investment in the Black community prevented them from progressing. And there were many challenges and barriers in terms of policies, in terms of funding, that hindered their ability to progress in this nation. Martin Luther King has been talking about investing in social services for quite some time. And so this is nothing new. People have been saying enough is enough for quite some time. And as a Black woman, someone who's also experienced various forms of injustice. In fact, I've shared on many occasions that I was pulled over in my own ward and told that I looked like some kid who apparently maybe was a drug dealer, who knows. And so just because I'm an elected official, at the end of the day, I'm still a Black woman, and I will be treated accordingly. And my goal is to change policy and to create a system that's equitable for all people, regardless of their race, regardless of their socioeconomic background, regardless of their immigration status. Everyone should have a pathway to success, to become citizens, and to be a part of this beautiful community that many of us have worked so hard to create, and all of you play a role in it. And so I truly appreciate all of you and my colleagues for joining me, as well as the facilitators for the amazing job. And I look forward to reading all of your input. And if you want to talk to me or any of our the other council members, My email is nirvaward3@gmail.com. We'll send a follow-up email with all of our contact information, and feel free to reach out. But I hope to see many of you at our in some of our finance committee meetings. And there already has been conversations around creating an initiative here. I've been meeting with Angie and Koma from United Way, Becky from Trinity Rep, Danielle, who was someone who worked for Cahoots in Eugene, Oregon. And this morning, I met early this morning at 7:30. I met with Lieutenant Zachary from the fire department, who actually worked on a proposal before COVID-19 around mental crisis response. And so there's things that are brewing, and we hope to embed your input in the decisions that we make going forward. So thank you all, and have a wonderful night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. This is Selena Matos. I'm sorry, I was trying to speak up. So yes, my answer is
the
yes.
Council President.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
What did you say? Can you say that again?
I didn't realize you were here. Hi.
My answer is yes. I'm sorry, I was trying to edit the audio.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.